This is In Character. I'm your host, Gerard Robinson, Vice President for Education at the Advanced Studies in Culture Foundation. Jennifer, welcome to In Character.
Thank you so much for having me.
Again, I really appreciate you carving out time to have the group call, but this is an opportunity for the viewing and listening audience to learn a little more about you. So question one, what caused you to leave your own classroom and decide to work as an administrator?
Well, I always joke that I had to leave my classroom like ripping off a Band-Aid. I had some other opportunities to leave the classroom and had always declined them. My school district, where I was a teacher and am now an administrator, was the first school district in the state of Ohio to be taken over by the state. And so times were getting a little scary. And I had an opportunity to interview with our local educational service center to be an English language arts supervisor. And I turned down the interview. And a few weeks later, school had ended and I was in the building for some meetings, and there was just a climate of fear and anxiety. And on a whim, I interviewed the director of the service center and said, I'm kind of regretting not interviewing. If anything were to come up in the future, keep me in mind. And she emailed me right back and said, can you come in at 8 o'clock the next morning? And, and there was a board meeting the following day. And so I had to make that decision quickly. I think that the walls, in your classroom do start to close in a little bit as sometimes teaching can be a very isolating profession. And just wanted an opportunity to move beyond those classroom walls and see what my influence could be. As a teacher, I was so blessed. I had a principal who believed in distributed leadership. And so she had given me a lot of opportunities to grow my leadership skills. And I really do thank her, because I think it kept me in my classroom longer, because I loved being in my classroom. And just that opportunity to stretch my wings, but still be in the classroom and still be with my students was really the best scenario. As we know, there aren't a lot of hybrid administrative roles or hybrid coaching roles. And so just finally had to pull off that Band-Aid and make that decision.
You mentioned you work in a place taken over by the state, and most people have no idea that since 1989, Jersey City was the first school system taken over by the state. It moved across the country for a host of reasons. So you're living that life. So, and you talk a little bit about that in the group setting. So we'll invite people to go listen to that. So you ripped off the Band-Aid, and now you're in a position of leadership. So what actions did or do you take to create a culture of learning and community inside of your classroom, or how does that spill over at times into outside activities?
Yeah, so we're a large district, so we're in a unique position because we are we're the smallest of the large urban districts in Ohio. So we are large enough where we are able to implement a wide range of programs to benefit our students, but small enough to still maintain that warm and inviting climate. And our teachers have gone through a lot. They've been through the ringer as we were taken over by the state in the earlier 2000s. And so initially the state had put an academic distress commission in charge of the school district. And then after a while appointed a CEO. So we are, our second CEO is in his second year. And part of their challenge has really been to alleviate the fears and anxieties of our teachers. Because we do, we've had a top-down model for quite some time. As our data has not improved. And so what happens is, instead of giving teachers more autonomy and respecting their knowledge and their expertise, we'd start to tighten those reins even more and make those decisions from the top down. So what we're really trying to do in this new administration is distribute that leadership a little bit more. So our principals are getting a little more autonomy than they've had in the past few years. And then that trickles down into our teachers' classrooms. And so really trying to help them to see the value in the decisions, but in helping them to be stakeholders in those decisions, because they haven't been for quite some time. And they feel, that they've lost a lot of their power and their voice. And so that's what we're really trying to do, is help them to find that. We've implemented a lot of programs as we strive to meet the needs of our diverse students. And so really helping our students to be smarter than, helping our teachers to be smarter than the programs, right? You can never replace a good teacher. And so really helping them to see that they are the force in the classroom. These programs or whatever we're implementing are just there to support their instruction and the needs of the kids, but we can't do without our teachers. I mean, they're the heart and soul of our school district. And every teacher that you talk to has a story of, how they have gone above and beyond to help our students, support our students' needs. And it's just really inspiring to hear, how they reach beyond the classroom walls.
You mentioned teachers being fearful of what's going on, or maybe the insecurity that comes along with the takeover. In some of the research that I looked at, teachers find themselves in a very precarious situation, not sure who do we answer to. You as an administrator working in this kind of role, particularly as someone who's in the classroom, how do you give them the comfort, the respect that they deserve when you have such uncertainty in play?
I think it really comes down to inviting them to be part of the decision-making process. I never want to be in a position where I am making decisions that affect all of my teachers without their input and without their voice. I have my areas of expertise and areas that I am very confident and skilled in. But in helping to lead a PK-12 district, I don't have areas of expertise in all areas. I have to rely on my teachers because they have areas of expertise that I don't have. They have experience that I don't have. And I always joke, when you leave the classroom, you wonder how long your street cred is going to last, right? Because the further, the larger the amount of time that you're out of your classroom, you lose that connection. It's not that you forget how strenuous being in the classroom is, or the challenges of, managing 25 different students and all of the, chaos that can happen in a classroom. But you move beyond that. And so I always need my teachers to remind me, this is what this looks like in the classroom, or this is why it will work, or this is why it won't work, and this is how we can revise it. Because they're in the thrust of the work, and they're the ones leading the charge, and we need that expertise when we make those decisions.
Because you serve as a classroom teacher, you're now in a leadership position, you see things that many people do not. You also mentioned that we hate to lose good teachers who to go into administration, and a lot of them do. Before you became an administrator, you were also an award-winning teacher. And so for the audience, talk to us about the day someone said, we're going to recommend you for an award. And take us to the point when you heard your name called, and what did all of that mean?
So I actually got a knock on my classroom door one afternoon. I was teaching class, and it was an office aide. So it was a young student, and she handed me a folder, and she said, this is from Mrs. Williams, who was my principal. And when I looked at the folder, it had information about Teacher of the Year. And I'm very lucky to be in a district where we do have a Teacher of the Year program. A lot of our schools in the area don't have a Teacher of the Year school program. So I talked to my principal at the end of the day, and I gave her my recommendations of who should be nominated for Teacher of the Year of the school that I was teaching in. And she said, no, you're my Teacher of the Year. And I really thought, I was a member of the building leadership team. And so I thought she just wanted my recommendation. I'm, in my local school district, we actually have a competitive program. So each of, I think at the time we had 15 school buildings. And so each of the different building nominees, we write a couple essays, we're interviewed, and all of that fun stuff. And it was just really surprising to get that call. And you're just so lucky because you get to represent all of the teachers, because you know how hard everyone is working. And to be, to make it to I call it the Final Four at the state level. And I remember getting the phone call and running down the hallway to my principal, and so excited. And she said, "You better not be having another baby." That's how excited I was to tell her. And my school was just so supportive. No one in my area had ever been named Teacher of the Year for the state before. And so it was really wonderful. And I think what made me so proud as well is that this was a really challenging time in our school district. This was one of the first few years that we'd been taken over by the state. And I'm not going to lie, there were, I heard a couple negative comments in my travels around the state, like, oh, the Teacher of the Year is from Youngstown, because sometimes we are judged solely on our data, and the data doesn't tell the whole picture. And so it was just one of my biggest joys to move around the state and share the triumphs of what teachers in my district were doing, and also the challenges. And how we were trying to work, work through those challenges.
Great. Youngstown, glad you mentioned it. People hear the name, they think about the data, but they often overlook the diamonds that are there, those in the rough and those that are on top. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. Thank you for sharing with us your journey, but also what you do in administration, because that's so important. And also thank you about talking about takeovers. You're one of the few administrators or teachers that I've had a chance to speak to who's gone through that experience. And unfortunately, I think there's gonna be a lot more of that taking place. And so when that subject is on the table, I'll make sure to reach out to you, or at least recommend people speak to you, because I think you're doing some wonderful work. And just know that you have support here from us at Character, and look forward to future conversations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.